Hi there, welcome back to the Community of Readers video blog. We're following the Old Testament readings for the Monkey Bar Challenge, and this week we're looking at the first half of the book of 1 Kings. This is called Peace at Any Price. 1 Kings picks up where 2 Samuel left off. After the death of David, Solomon, his son, takes the throne. And we have the tale of Israel's mightiest sovereign. If you thought King David was great, you ain't seen nothing. Solomon is a suzerain, a king to whom other smaller nations paid tribute as vassals. Amongst Solomon's vassals were the old Assyrians, Tyre and Sidon. This is the period in Israel's history in which they have the most power. And yet Solomon is not remembered fondly by Israel's history books, certainly not as fondly as the great King David, and for one very clear reason: women. 700 wives and 300 concubines, to be precise. Now, according to 1 Kings, it's not the sheer number of women that is the problem for Solomon, though let's be honest, surely it must have been. But it is the fact that they led him after other gods. He followed Ashtoreth, the god of lust and sexuality. He followed Molech, the god of the Ammonites, the bull deity that is associated with these horrendous orgy-like child sacrifice rituals. And he followed Chemosh of the Moabites. But I think there's something to be understood about Solomon by reading between the lines a little. Remember, Solomon's mother was widowed by his father, King David, by sending her previous husband off to war to die. And Israel had spent years with military highs and lows. And here is Solomon, who achieves what no king, no judge, no prophet has done for Israel up until this point. He achieves both power and peace. They'd had peace without power, and they'd had power but without peace. To achieve both is surely the work of a genius. No wonder people the world over called him wise. And yet this achievement comes at a cost. We read in chapter 11 verse 3 that the 700 wives of Solomon were daughters of royal birth. 700 treaties for peace with 700 kings of nations, city-states and tribes. 700 pawns paid in the power plays of the ancient Near East. And 700 women with minds of their own, able to act as emissaries of their father's gods. Taking a wife as part of a peace treaty was part of the bargain, but surely keeping her happy was the other. If an influential wife went crying to daddy that Solomon wouldn't sacrifice to Chemosh, then relations with the Moabites would be at risk. Isn't sacrifice to Chemosh the easier path, the better path, the path to peace? And yet Israel's history remembers Solomon as a sellout because he lacked fidelity to Yahweh. I think it's a tough story. What would you or I do if we were on the throne of David? Would you risk war when you had a chance for peace? Or would you turn away from the idols, from the other gods of the surrounding nations and fight, even if it meant fighting for a faith that couldn't bring peace. The story of Solomon is a story of compromise. And it opens up questions for any of us in positions of leadership. How far should our diplomacy go? Which is more important, unity or truth? Can the two really ever be mutually exclusive? And who decides? Who decides what is right or what is wrong? The compromise that Solomon made, and it really in the end is a sorry story, because after his death the nation splits into two as the people of Israel are unable to deal with the situation that he left. It's a story of compromise, a story that lacks some boundaries, long-term stability, identity was compromised for short-term expediency, and it left Israel vulnerable. So we know it's easy to go really overboard on rules and regulations at all levels of life, religious, government. Many of us have lived in different scenarios where that's been the case. We only need to look at the New Testament to see a kind of faith that challenges the Pharisees, where that had become the case in Jesus' day. And yet, on the other side, I think Solomon forces us to engage with the thorny issue of where are appropriate limits. In the various power plays in which we find ourselves, in our day-to-day lives, and in the challenges that we face in living in this world, we're free in Christ, according to the New Testament. So where will we freely choose to mark our borders?